Welcome to this YSL short. In this short, we're going to have a look at how you can set up dynamic security. I've already created a file here, link in the description below. You can see I have a bunch of different employees, all of which have their own roles. These roles belong to my role definition table, and my role definition table connects to my region table, and it has all my customers, or in this case region table. So for example, role definition A, so they're my highest rank, have access to customers 1 through 4. Customer B has 5 through 9. This email address table could either be typed in, or maybe you could connect it using the dataset connector of Active Directory. For ease of use and so you can actually open up this file, and I don't want to show you all my details, I'm just going to use the typed in table I just used enter data with. But if you wanted to, you could come in here and connect to the Active Directory. You can use different measures if you would like to. In this example, I'm just going to use it all inside of the modeling security settings. So if you go to the modeling tab for me, and you'll see there, manage roles. So I'm going to give that a click. In here, I'm going to create a new role, and I'm going to call this one, let's say, fixed profile. Let's get it working with one email address before we worry about doing more than one. You can, if you want to, skip to the final target table and do all your filtering on there, but I'm going to build it up for us. The first thing I would like to do is filter my access allowed table. I'm going to click on the ellipses next to access allowed, add a filter, and I'm going to choose to filter on the email address. Don't worry, we'll make it dynamic in just a moment, but if you bear with me, I'm going to filter this to my trainee1 at wiseowl.co.uk. Then what I'm going to do is give that a save. And then to test it, all you need to do is to the right of manage roles, choose view as. I'm going to tick my fixed profile, which remember is already filtered to trainee1, click OK, and you'll see it's now filtering my page. What it's not doing is it's not carrying over to my roles definition. This is because in my relationship view, you'll see how they're connected is not the way that we need. Access allowed has multiple people with the same role, meaning it's on the many side of the relationship. We need to filter the role definition table, which in turn will filter the role region table. So let's go back into our manage roles. And in here, I'm going to go down to the table I want to filter, which is my role definition. So go down to your role definition, click on the ellipses, add filter, and I'm going to go with roles. Again, we're going to keep this simple in this example and fix the value. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to say calculate, and you'll see immediately one of the biggest downsides to typing your code directly in here. We have no IntelliSense help. One typo and everything's going to fall apart. One thing I'd recommend to you is consider writing your code in a measure and then either using that measure or copying and pasting the data across. I'm going to cancel out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a measure first. Remember, you can't create measures inside the model view. So instead, I'm going to switch to the data view. I'm going to right click on the measure table and choose new measure. This measure is going to return whoever I've filtered down to. So I'm going to call this current user ID. And then I want to filter the table. So I'm going to say calculate. Calculate lets us change the filter on a table. I'm going to calculate the selected value. Selected value is a little bit like min and max. It returns the only item in the column. Well, we're going to filter it down to trainee1, and so the only item in there is going to be the ID role that we want. I want the selected value from my access table. And to work out what their role is, I'm going to say comma, and I'm going to filter their email, and I'm going to filter mine down to trainee1 at wiseowl.co.uk. Close your bracket. So now this measure holds the ID, my letter, for this user. I've got all of my wonderful IntelliSense helping me. Now I could reference this measure, or you can copy the code. Let's switch back to our modeling tab. So either in report view or in model view. Click on manage roles. Why is it not on every page? Go to your table that you want to filter. So we want to filter our role table. Click on the ellipses, add a filter, roles, and we're going to set that equal to the role ID that we just calculated. So that's now filtering it to only the role that user belongs to. Click on save, and if we check the front end, you'll see we've now got 2 tables filtered. Using this, we now know what region IDs or customer IDs this user is allowed to see. We need to take this column of filtered IDs and apply it to our customer table. One last table to filter. Let's go to the modeling tab, click on manage roles. We're going to go down to the table we want to filter. So in this case, we want to filter the region table. So if we go down to region, add filter, region ID. So I don't want to set it equal to something because that means I could only have one value. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to say in. In means that I can compare this list to another list. Unfortunately, I don't have that list yet. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a variable, var, and this is going to be the role name that we've given them. We're going to set that equal to the code that we actually already made. So if I switch back through, copy my calculate that works out again what their ID is, and set the role name equal to that. Variables hold the result, not the expression. This literally holds for trainee 1 right now the letter A. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to return. And what I need to do is make this table here, my role region table, that defines what customers, or regions, this user can access. So now what I want to do is I want to return this role region table, filtered to, you guessed it, the role name that we've just selected into our variable. Calculate returns a single column. We want a table. So I'm going to say calculate table, open the bracket. The table that I want to work out is not the full table. We only want a single column, this region ID column. To do this, I'm going to use values. Values returns a single column. The values that I want is my role region table, and I want the column region ID. But I don't want the whole thing, so I want to filter this, comma, where my role region table, role name, is equal to the one that we held in our variable, i.e. we want to filter it to just the letter A in this scenario. So I'm going to set that equal to my variable. Then close the bracket. So to recap, the region ID is my role region table that I want to filter. I'm going to work out what the role name is using my email address, and I'm going to filter to just that role name. I then want to return a table that I've calculated, but I don't want the whole table, so I use values to return a filtered column. In this case, the region ID or customer ID this person's allowed to view. I'm going to filter this where the role name is equal to the role name we just calculated. So in this case, the letter A. So with that, if we click the tick just to make sure there's no syntax errors, Click Save. What we should now see is a table filtered to only the customers, or in this case regions, they're allowed to access. If I click on my products details page, you'll see it is now filtered to just the regions this person's allowed to see. Now that's great, but what if we want to make it dynamic? Well, to make something dynamic, we'll need a measure. The specific measure that we need is going to return our user's email name. So I'm going to call this email address. There are two that we can use. Username, that would return the user's login name. So for example, for me it would return sglau. It would return fully yzowl/sglau. The one I'm interested in though is the user's principal name, as that's going to return the email address. I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to add that into a card at the bottom of the page. Now right now that shows my username, but when you're in the cloud after this has been published, it will show the logged in email address of the user. To make this dynamic, all you need to do is go to the Modeling tab, go to your Manage Roles, and then instead of our fixed value of trainee 1, which was great for testing, we're going to put in that user principal name function. We're going to go to our region table, and we're going to do the same thing. Instead of trainee 1, we're going to put in the user principal name, which remember is returning the email address of the person that's logged in. And then one last time in the role definition table, replace our trainee 1 with the user principal name. Give that a save. And then you'll see I'm not showing any data because it's not actually returning an email address. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to View As. I'm going to keep my fixed profile filter ticked, and I'm going to tell it that I'm logging in as a different user. And the user I want to log in with is my trainee1@yzowl.co.uk. Click OK, and you'll see it's filtered to only what trainee 1 can see. This time I'm going to go back into View As, and I'm going to change it to trainee 3, who can see a different set of regions to trainee 1. Click OK, and you'll see we've now got that dynamic connection working. So that's all you need to do. Create a filter that works out who's logged in using user principal name, apply that filter to each of your tables, and hey presto, dynamic security. I hope you've enjoyed this Wise Out Short, and if you've got any questions, leave it in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.